and consistently only into one form that we value, which is written meaning. So by the time they end up as adults, that's what we assess, that's what we value above all else. But we believe that meaning making, and particularly in the digital age, writing remains critically important, but it's very different from oracy and oral communication, and audio and gesture and tactile meanings and spatial and visual meanings are becoming equally important, not only because we work in spaces that use them, the digital spaces, but in the world at large, we are getting meaning from these sources in powerful ways. And as Gunter Kress reminds us, the visual is probably becoming more powerful and more dominant even than the written text. Next. So if we're going to value these different modes, we have something that we call grammar for the linguistic mode for languages, but how do we discuss and describe the power of all the other modes? So what we came up with is 5 questions from systemic functional linguistics from the Halliday paradigm to say what questions could we ask across those modes that would help us enable learners to see what the components of meaning making within those modes are. So the 5 categories we had was what does something refer to, whether it's linguistic or visual or spatial or gestural or audio. What does it represent? What's the reference for it? Secondly, what kind of agency is involved? What is the social component? How do the meanings connect the characters involved in the linguistic domain, in the visual domain? How does perspective work? In the spatial, what's emphasized? What's in the front? What's in the back? In terms of gestural, in terms of mood. The third one, of course, is organizational. What kind of structural form have these meanings taken as a consequence of the design? How do they hang together, whether it's linguistic or visual or spatial or gestural or audio? How are they organized in order to make sense? And following that, what's the context for the way the meanings fit into the larger world, whether it's a piece of text or a piece of visual or some space that we're looking at or some gesture or some sound that we're hearing. How does it fit into the world that it relates to and it represents? And finally, but equally important, is what we call the ideological component, or whose interest does the mode as it's represented aid? In whose interest is it? Whether it's the linguistic one, who's the author, what kind of power and agency does it have, if it's visual, spatial, or gestural, or audio, what's it trying to convince us to do? So these are 5 questions that we believe it was important to ask across the 5 modes, in order that the 5 modes become things that we can teach that have the same value or equal to the linguistic. These most are multi-literacies. Next. But we soon decided that perhaps we needed to split text and speech. Originally we had linguistics, but we changed it to speech because we do realize between writing, in fact, which is a different creative exercise. Split up the touch and feel component that we thought was important to objects. And so we had the 5 functions against 7 meanings. So this is a work in progress for us. It's a difficult domain to be talking about the importance of the linguistic modes without having a meta language. So we've been trying to imagine and construct a meta language that will enable teachers and learners to design with multimodalities in ways that are powerful. Next. Of course, the first thing we did was to look at, what's parallel. So, actions, they're expressed by verbs in sentences, whereas in images we get vectors. In grammar we have prepositions that create certain kinds of relationships, whereas in images we have foregrounding and backgrounding, for example. In comparative, there are comparatives in languages, which are kind of parallel, like sizing and placement in images. And of course, the clause structure in a language is comparable to the left-right placement in images. And the real ideal in language can be associated with the top-down placement in images. There are lots of parallelisms that we can talk about across the different modes. But also we wanted to be mindful of the fact that even having said that, there are also powerful disjunctions that we also have to understand. For example, a movie is very different from reading a novel about the movie, as you know, and an image can never do the same things as a description in language, because description carries time and space as well as imagery. Next. For example, if I said to you out there, I can see you, the mountain loomed large, right? So I'm referring to something. What do you think as I say that? It has meaning, it has power, it's good alphabetical literacy in a good structure. However, if I move to the next one, in my mind, this is what I had, this mountain. I don't know what mountain you had in your head, but this is the mountain in my village in Greece. I was born in the little house there in the forefront. And when I talk about the mountain, loom large, my memory goes to this very specific place. So language is more general in what it can capture. Images are more specific and more complex in different ways. So we have a number of differences there between writing and image. These are some of the things we need to do to understand, to help learners understand the power of each form. Writing has sequential meaning elements. It prioritizes time, and it has it's a process. Whereas the image, it has simultaneous meaning elements in it. You can see that from that picture. There are a number of things that we could be talking about. The height, the little church in the front, there's a whole range of things there that tell you much more than just the mountains. And it is a viewing part that prioritizes space. And usually you need a caption to support it. Next. So having said this, we have some paradoxes between the parallelism of the design elements, the meta language that we're trying to create, and the disjunctures that occur between modalities. So it requires from us a different grammar, a different set of tools for helping learners understand this power of multimodality and to make it integral to whatever pedagogical approach they have. So for us, the scope of literacy learning and assessment is affected by this. What do you teach? What do you assess? If we're expecting people to make meaning in multimodality, then we have to have the tools to evaluate it. And secondly, what kind of engagement is possible and learner preferences for meaning making? How can it enable learners to get to the same goals that we have, but through pathways that might be more powerful for them? I'm not talking about learning styles here. I'm just talking about preferences for expression in meaning making. And importantly, how do we prepare learners for the real world of performance when the world is rocked by a tweet of a powerful man or an image of terrible brutalities that exist in the world. How do we prepare them for a world where they're bombarded by multimodality in really powerful ways, and in ways that can confuse, in ways that can delude, in ways that avoid honesty and transparency? There's a whole different world in which our learners are now complex world having to perform in. And then, of course, what is the effective way in which disciplines and interdisciplinarity understand? I mean, there are some disciplines now that, for example, surgery, which is presented even in medical schools entirely through videos with explanations of those videos. How can we use those kinds of resources, and how do we need to use them in the preparation of learners? And finally, everybody in all nations likes to have competence and standards for performance. So in literacy, multimodality is an essential part of preparing a learner. What for us, and what kind of competence should we be looking for? These are the challenges we're presented by the kinds of proposals we are putting to you about the necessary ways in which learners have to be prepared for the future. Next. So, meaning making for us involves multiple modes. It is synesthetic in every moment of meaning. Like you can hear my sound, you can see the image, you can see my hands moving, I can see you. These happen together, they don't happen separately, and they happen across all modes. So, how do we think about it in terms of agency? Well, we are all born into particular available designs. I was born to a Greek family. Greek was the first language that I heard. They were the available designs. I engaged with that language for as long as it was possible for me before my parents became migrants to an English-speaking country where another language. But the process of engaging with those available designs is the process of learning. And as a consequence, we get something that's redesigned in whatever language or whatever mode we're talking about. And that's the process of transformation, and those become the available designs for the next generation. So we wanted a very dynamic approach to understanding, remembering vocabulary or remembering grammatical rules, but learners as agents, right, in their difference. And that learning and meaning making is called. Meaning and literacy is about meaning making. And you can parrot language, but if it doesn't make meaning, you fail, even if the words seem to be in a nice, straight, orderly fashion. Okay. The last point I want to make in terms of our multiliteracy theory is pedagogy is really very hard. I don't know what it's like in Brazil, but teachers usually have, they like to keep classrooms busy. And mostly is what we call pedagogy. Next. And a range of approaches, and we're here in this to help explain what we have. From pedagogy, an approach to teaching is about efficiency. important traditional. But you can by name, by labeling, by theory. It is, what they call front-end loading. This is what's correct, and it's active, and there's a place for that as well. Critical pedagogy. You need to have whatever you're learning, whether it's historical or scientific, or realize its purpose. What's its function in the world? What does it do? And another approach, which comes from the applied learning field, which talks about now types of choices. Each class of learners, each subject, each goal, right? So, and take learners in a journey backwards and forwards from experiencing to critical framing, centralizing, to transform, until you know that they have been transformed as learners and have been able to become that thing, that goes in that person that they need to become in learning is purposeful, and the teacher needs to have a repertoire and move backwards and forwards. There have been fashions around these approaches, but our belief is, from all the work that we've done in schools, that no fashion works for all subjects and all learners. We need, as professionals, just like medical professionals and other professionals, to analyze the context, to know that where our learners are coming from, and to know what choices to make. And for us, this is the reason why design and transformation have to be the vital pointers for us as educators. Next. So we'll come to another component, and that is, what does the digital afford us? Right? Things about pedagogy, diversity, and multimodality, and in the regular classroom, you can do many of those things. But what is it about the digital moment that provides us with other affordances, other opportunities? Well, of course, the first one is that the cyber world is continuous, anywhere, anytime. So it allows for ubiquitous learning. And ubiquitous learning, for better or for worse, has become a habit of the mind of the 21st century. You can be anywhere. You pick up your phone, you ask Siri, you look something up. The possibility of continuous learning, not bounded by the library or the university or the classroom, is available to us. So what does it mean for us when we design our learning experiences? Secondly, we know that if a learner is involved in making knowledge, not just receiving knowledge, they're more likely to be able to apply it, more likely to keep it longer. So we create opportunities where the learner makes the textbook, or makes the learning activities, or makes objects that demonstrate their learning. Active knowledge making rather than memory recitation is a very important affordance that the digital allows you. And thirdly is the multimodal means. Now, in the past, in the traditional classroom, if you wanted to be a photographer, you had to have different skills. If you wanted to print newspapers, you had to have different skills. If you wanted to make music, you needed different skills. But now, and this is the most revolutionary thing about the digital world, you click through and create meaning with sound, with image, with alphabetical literacy, symbolic things. It is the most revolutionary thing that there is about the digital. It's the manufacturing of meaning, right? That's available to little babies and to adults. So multimodality will become, and multimodal meanings will become much more powerful ways for communicating, and are becoming much more powerful ways of communicating. Well, the fourth affordance of the digital is to give instant feedback as you go, recursive feedback. And we all know that now. We're all hooked onto Facebook where we're looking for feedback all the time, where we're wanting people to like us, or Instagram respond. We're constantly looking for affirmation and recognition. But the digital world allows the classroom to be able to do that as people are performing. They can talk to each other, they can get teachers, experts, and recursive feedback just in time when you need it. Is much more powerful than getting feedback when you finish something and it says an A or B or 10 out of 10 or whatever. It's too late then. You need your feedback when you're performing, when you're making active knowledge, not later. And if you work in the cyberspace, in the digital environment, that's an affordance. The fifth affordance, which for us is very important, we talk about the social mind, it's collaborative intelligence. Making knowledge on your own is important, but even more powerfully is when you work together, when you collaborate in order to make meaning. And the cyber world allows collaboration in formal classrooms, outside formal classrooms, while you're on the beach. The capacity to collaborate, and not just with particular individuals, but much more broadly, allows us to solve problems and make meaning in ways unthought of before in real time. The sixth affordance of the digital is metacognition, which is thinking about your thinking. When you perform and construct meaning within a digital environment, within the cyber world, you can change it as you go, you can have other people give you ideas, you can reflect about its power or its impact in much more dynamic ways than writing something on a piece of paper and then giving it to your neighbour and waiting for something to come back to you or giving it to your teacher. Metacognition, thinking about what you've done, and the epistemological work that's required, is a very powerful component of performance and an indicator for learning. Last one, shared learning. It's very hard when there's one teacher and 30 students to do differentiated learning. No matter how much we say it matters, it's impossibly hard to do. However, in the digital space, it is prospects for different levels, and other teachers to collaborate. These 7 affordances make it possible to do things with all and good. But this is a checklist. Other tools that you're using allowing you to deploy these affordances. And the more that you can deploy them, the more engaging and creative and sustained will be. And I'm not talking assessment, things under assessment and focus on what really matters, which is assessing as you go. Because when you work in a digital space, you can collect and observe information in action as learning, not external to learning. Next. So, how do we bring all this together? For us, it comes together in powerful ways. Learning by design and designs for learning, which is teachers designing their learning, the students co-designing with them, operating with multimodality, recognizing and harnessing diversity, producing the teaching elements which draw upon the pedagogical choices, which provide scaffolds and learning elements for learners, and finally, moving into where we wanted to put all this theory and practice, what would it look like in a different? So we were able, I think, Bill's spoken to you about this already, to work with people here at the U of I to create a digital learning ecology, right, that utilized the 7 affordances and was able to allow teachers to create scaffolds that made appropriate pedagogical choices and that harnessed diversity, allowed for multimodal production, and the concept of design was with both learners and educators. And that's the end of my presentation. I hope it has contributed to what Bill has already presented to you, and that is helpful to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Meredith. Thank you for such an interesting presentation, which I'm very sure was so suitable to our audience. We had planned to have questions for you, but since the connection is so good and we still have some time, I think we could open it to the audience, just because it's okay. Maybe we could have 2 questions.
É o ventilador do projetor. Tire de cima do projetor.
Here.
Alguém gostaria de... Sorry? Okay. We might have 2 questions for you. Okay? Não, não necessidade.
É a microfone.
Yeah, this is just nice.
Mary?
Yes?
You're listening? Thanks. It's actually more of a comment. I'd like to say thank you for everything you said and to say thanks to all the organization of it. Was very productive with Dr. Bill. But I'd like to repeat a question that I asked Bill in the first day of the event. What are the changes that universities and schools should make to make these theories possible? In the mindset, but also structurally speaking, because one of the things we face here is that some of our schools are not prepared, structurally speaking, and some of our teachers are not also prepared for this new mindset. What changes should we make?
Okay, thank you. Can you hear me? Yes? That is a very important and good question. And in some ways, it's an embarrassing question. And embarrassing for somebody like me who has worked with Bill for 30 years now with these theoretical issues as a scholar. But as you know, I've also spent 20 years as a dean trying to answer that question and to create the conditions. So I'll just tell you what I have done, right? Because there's no point being theoretical, but we are in a university in the U of I, it's just a case study, that's invented these tools, right? It's invented PayPal, it's invented the flat screen, it's invented, I can't tell you how much of the digital world it's invented. But prestigious college of education at the University of Illinois, one of the top ranked colleges in the world, continue to think that those things that are digital are not part of X. You know, they're part of this other world. So it is a big struggle to be able to convince educators, right, that every industry has changed and that sacred is leaving. The sacred relationship in the small classroom they believed in remains, but it's only one part of the future. So what do? You do have to create, you back what moves in any university setting, because you will not get a union shift. One person, two person, three. You model what is possible. You collaborate across disciplines. So if you're in education, you collaborate with a computer scientist or an engineer to create something for your classroom. And educators are only moved by what they see makes a difference. And when those activities end up with something that works, and when learners flock to it, it will put pressure on them to do their job and become part of the future. But it's not an easy thing, because as I said at the beginning of my talk, we've invested in humans, we've invested in libraries, we've invested in books, we've invested in classroom with chairs nailed to the floor. And it's very hard to be able to use those in other ways when people are scared or reluctant. So the other thing we have to do is provide them with the technical support. But I don't mean by that just technicians, but people who will work with educators to help them design learning activities, to help them implement. I do believe classrooms, whether they're in universities, colleges, or traditional elementary or high schools, we have to work together as educators and share the classes and share our ideas. It is about collaboration. We're not going to get to a transition the old way. So we'll have new teachers coming in who are more willing, but usually they get swamped by the curriculum and the test, and they need to be supported. But that's important. Hiring new people who are digital savvy, providing technical support, which equals the design support, together with learners. Testing and planning, giving yourself a chance to test different tools and become familiar. That's important to do. But you need leaders who are prepared to shift backwards and forwards between delivering to Caesar, you know, the exams and the curriculum, and allowing enough space for creativity and collaboration. It will happen. We have no choice. In our university, whenever we open up a course to online, it's flooded, even by residential students who are living in the dorms. So students want both the face-to-face, both the traditional sitting at the professor's, you know, kind of feet, learning the great things, but they also want to be agents, to make meaning, to experiment, to be global. They want their demands are going to make us shift. So what we try to do, we didn't want to create a platform. We created Scholar as a platform in order to demonstrate that it was possible to do in this space to other educators something that was engaging, that was human, that was, allowed voice, that allowed for diversity, all the things that we value so much that we can't deal with. We had to demonstrate that it was possible to do. And I think we're going to go one step forward, 2 steps back, one step, but no, and I want to commend you because it was courageous of you to invite Bill and us to come and talk to you about these things and to demonstrate what we've done. But we do it to inspire you. We do it to motivate you. We do it to say, you are the future, and you can model some of this, and you can join forces with others and become, create learning ecologies which are hybrid, right? They're not going to be completely transformed, but always aiming to prepare learners for the future. I can't give you a simpler answer than that, but I'm very much, what's the word, awed. You know, I'm a Greek background, we work a lot of in Greece, we come there to Brazil, and we see that there is purpose for educators to harness the affordances of the new technology. They want to create learners with more agency and power and with real meaning-making tools. So that is something that we should celebrate, despite all the problems we have.
So I think we can still have one more question. Somebody else? Quem quiser fazer em português, dá um jeito de traduzir. Okay, then. Thank you again, Mary. I would like to take the opportunity to thank you and Bill again for making yourselves available to talk to us, take part in contributing to all this. Thank you.
And good luck.